Yes, there is racism in Australia. I think everybody is racist to a degree.
It is the newest people, or they tend to be the people to get picked on.
A lot of the violent racism is acted out against the newly arrived ones, eh?
To me, I think people are just afraid of Asians for no real reason. We just group Asians as a whole as, one type of person.
Not only Anglo-Australians, but from different cultures to other different cultures.
There is a lot of it around that isn't seen.
Without a doubt, racism is a part of the Australian life.
Tonight, Attitude looks at how we treat young migrants in Australia. While migration from Asian countries is increasing, in the past 5 years they amounted to less than 20% of our new arrivals. But as the latest immigrants to Australia, they seem to bear the brunt of racist hostility.
When people point it out to me in a really negative way, then I get really cut.
We examine why racism exists and whether or not the media and entertainment industries contribute to it. And we look at the positive moves to deal with racism and plans to legislate against it. But first, Alex Tarney meets those on the receiving end.
Rudy, Tran, Andrea and Guanding all call themselves Australian. But because of the way they look, they suffer ongoing pain and harassment. Tran's parents come from Vietnam. He has lived in Cabramatta and Sydney all of his life.
Australians, as you know, are very racist towards Asian race. Like, you see graffiti everywhere saying Asians out and Asians take jobs and stuff. And I guess it's a way of life for the Australians or whoever to be racist, you know?
Tran was kicked out of school. He says it was because he fought back against another boy that was using racist violence. It frustrates him that he was seen as the guilty one.
I used to go to this school, alright? And I was kicked out somewhat, not last year, at the beginning of last year, through a fight caused by racism. And that was because this big Australian guy picked on a little Asian Vietnamese guy, you know. He had chest pains and he kicked him. So I jumped in and I hit him too, you know. And then the principal didn't see it as a sign of racism, but just saw who done the fight and that. Schools don't understand about racism at all. They just see it as one thing, you know, like fighting and that's bad, and then see you later out of the school. Racism in school really starts at the home where the parents are. And if the parents are racist, the kids are going to come to school being racist too.
Tran says many migrants come from countries in which the authorities were not someone to trust. And this makes it particularly threatening when this attitude is reinforced in Australia.
The police in Cabramatta are racist. They are very racist. They swear to us in our own language, all right? Slap us around. And, like, treat us disrespectful. Maybe it's because how people look. Maybe it's because of the culture. Maybe because, Asians, that some people don't like us because they say we dogs or something. But we don't really eat dogs and cats or whatever. It's just rumours that spread, you know, because we're just normal people like everyone else.
Guanding came from China as a refugee 5 years ago and has experienced a lot of abuse.
These two Aussie guys, not top, you know, kind of abused. And they saw me, right? They kept swearing at me. Hey, Nip, come here, fight, you know? You know Kung Fu? Come here, fight me. Fucking Chinese, go back to China, come and fight me. And I stood there, you know? I kept looking at them and said, why swearing at me? I said, come and fight me, Chinese, go back to China, you nips. And I was so angry, you know?
He thought Australia would be paradise, but but constant harassment has made him think of leaving.
Every time I walk down in the street with my friends, you know, people always give you dirty looks, you know. Now, you know, I think Australia's not my country, you know. Why should I stay here? I'm going back to my country, you know, China. All my friends say so, you know. They say, oh, what do you leave Australia for, you know? And I think, it's not worth living here sometimes, you know.
A recent study of young Vietnamese refugee students in Melbourne schools and streets found racist attitudes were pushing many of them to the brink of mental collapse. The survey by the Melbourne University Psychiatry Department found the highest levels of racist harassment occur in school. The second highest level of harassment was on the street. 14% of students experienced physical injury or threats of physical violence. Rudy came from Indonesia 7 years ago. He moved with his younger brother to Melbourne and lived in a refuge. He supported both of them through school and university and has just completed his architectural degree at Melbourne Uni.
At one stage of my life, I was saying, okay, that's it. As far as I'm concerned, I'm not going to have any more connection with so-called white Australians. And that's really sad to see, because like, so far the experiences I have was negative, but I dealt at that point. We were a group of young people hanging around in Footscray and just, you know, walking around. We happens to be, for some reasons, all from Asian background. And maybe because of the school we went to or whatever, but it happens so like that. And there were calls from across the road, you know, taunts. We ignore it. We keep walking, and and they came around. They spit at us, and it was like at that point, you know, one of my mates just threw a punch, and before I know, it's like all hell's broke loose. And I regret it. I regret the points, but I mean, you see red, you know. It's like, as I say, you can only be pushed so far. I consider myself as pacifist. I hide violence. I don't like it. But it's enough to make me angry. I mean, it makes me angry enough to go and basically have a fist fight.
Rudy says racist prejudice cuts even deeper for refugees.
It's also awakened a lot of painful memories as well, because many of young people came here, run away from something overseas, you know, and coming to a new country, trying to adjust to here, and then suddenly being made unwelcome. Now, I don't think it's overreaction at all. Not at all. The hurts are genuine, and believe me, it does really hurt.
Rudy has a message to the people who are using racist violence.
Look at why you're doing it. Why are you angry? And a lot of them will say, well, the Asians took our job and we have the right to be angry. Actually, to check the facts, are they? Because I'll argue that by the same token, they also create jobs for you. If they say that, well, they're taking over this country, are they? It's only, less than 5% of Asian in this country? Ask yourself that question. Sure, they're taking away things from you, but ask yourself whether they have something to offer in return. And hell, I believe I've got a lot of things to offer.
Andrea Ho is a third-year journalism student. She comes from a Chinese and Dutch background. Although she has lived in Australia all her life, she still suffers racism because of her Asian appearance.
I've experienced all the usual things, like, you know, people spitting at you in the streets, people coming up to you in supermarkets and saying, go home to your own country, people calling you names like wog, nip, chink, all the works. There are some classics, like the first day I ever went to high school, I rolled up there, you know, and I had an English class, and I'm just sitting there in my English class, and some teacher wanders in and goes, oh, you know, you, come with me. And so we all got up, you know, not knowing what was going on, and she took us off to another classroom, and after about 10 minutes I realised that she'd taken me away to an English as a second language classroom, and it took me another 10 minutes or so to impress upon her that I really didn't need to be there, you know. That type of thing happens. I think that racism like that tends to happen through people's really naive assumptions, I guess you could say. I don't feel any different. And when people point out to me that I look different, it comes as a bit of a surprise, you know. And yeah, when people point it out to me in a really negative way, then I get really cut. I get really hurt by it. I find that some of the most overt racism, you know, people who come up to you in the street and sort of call you names to your face, tend to be your, well, without trying to stereotype, your RSL type stereotype, you know, the sort of person who's gone away and fought against the Japanese and the war and stuff like that, and oh gee, isn't it terrible that we've got all these Asian hordes coming out from under the bed and whatever else, and here they are in our society. I think that racism tends to be focused around any group that looks different. So certainly Asians do get picked out for racism, and particularly because they are the most recent migrant group to have saturated Australia.
Well, the things that I've experienced is just walking into places that are very Anglo-populated. You sort of walk into that sort of place and you feel you're not welcome.
Speak, cocaine dealer, drug smuggler, things like that, for being from South America.
When people would call me those names, it really hurt me. I was reduced to tears.
And there was one person from New Guinea in my high school, and she was just considered a freak. And that was really, really awful.
But because I'm now involved with the Chinese girl, it has opened my eyes, and I know how much it can hurt somebody.
Racial harassment is widespread and making the lives of many young Australians hell. But while Australia is a multicultural society, our media and popular culture may be to blame for pushing racist stereotypes. Gavin Morris looks at those who have perpetuated racist attitudes.
I believe that the longer the immigration continues from Asia, and the more people actually come from there, the more watered down our culture will become. And in time, the sheer numbers will simply swamp people in this country and any other cultures that exist here also. I don't believe that at this point in time that there is anything to be gained from accepting cultures from an alien-type background.
By his own definition, Simon Dinsbergs is a racist.
In the definition of racial pride in one's own people, I am a racist, yes. In regard to hatred of other people, I don't believe I am at all in any way, shape or form. I believe integration and multiculturalism cause racial hatred by actually forcing people upon each other who for hundreds or thousands of years have lived separately.
He's the founder of White Australian Resistance, or WAR. It's promoting a halt to immigration and the creation of a European-based Australian society.
The initials mean a war. It can be fought on many ways. It can be fought politically. It can be fought on many different terms. So I think that it probably is significant, a war for survival. I believe that people should basically integrate into our society, and if they can't do that, I don't think there should be a place here for them. Australian identity is basically a composition of various European backgrounds. We have had Asians here in the past, from China and so forth, but I don't really believe that they have contributed much to our present-day culture.
He's also the editor of WAR's newsletter, White Separatist.
I don't believe there was a hateful word in that entire magazine. Personally, I believe that racism is not actually a bad thing. Race is a person's species or cultural or racial background. To say that a person is hateful because they have preference to their own people, it's not hateful at all in any way, shape or form. Racial hate is a different thing altogether. I think that if we were to move towards a society that was ideal, it would be one that had respect for other races of people, but in their own countries and in territories. I don't believe that we have to accept them into our backyard to have respect for them. I think it's exactly the opposite. People talk about saving the koala bear, but nobody speaks about saving, say, European people, whose numbers are continuing to dwindle.
resentment was the motivating factor for me. That is a common factor that you do find in these groups.
Like Simon Dinsberg's, David Greason spent much of his youth dedicated to creating a white Australia. He was a member of the right-wing League of Rights. He quit the group after deciding he'd been fooled.
Yeah. Immediately after leaving the organisation, I was quite distraught, and I suppose the only thing I could comfort myself with was the thought that although I was fooled by some very intelligent literature, and that it wasn't particularly crude, even though I knew some of it was. And then in writing my autobiography, I looked back at it, and it was just absolutely horrified. It was crap. What did you think about Hong Kong?
It's crap.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's just too busy, and you can't get away anywhere. I think the most telling factor was when I was in a taxi in Sydney, and there was a Vietnamese taxi driver, and I was chatting to this driver, and I said, well, what did you do in Vietnam? And he said that he was the head of the Civil Aviation Authority. And I thought, that's unbelievable. You know, here's a guy who was far more intelligent than I was, driving a cab, no disrespect to cab drivers, and I thought, this is absolutely terrible. This poor bugger has, you know, built up a life in his homeland, and now he's been forced out of it, and he's come to this country. And then there was this little sort of parenthesis in my head, and I thought, when he gets here, there are gits like me shouting, go home, and this is absolutely appalling. And you can't really stay in a racist organisation when you believe that sort of thing. It tends to undermine you.
David's now come full circle and publishes a newsletter warning of right-wing groups he used to be a member of. He's now a supporter of multiculturalism.
Yeah, there are plenty of cultural differences. You know, I don't particularly like certain Asian foods, and some I do, but it doesn't matter. The things that divide us are nowhere near as great as the things that bring us together.
Immigrants and faggots, they make no sense to me.
Young Australians don't have to look far to see examples of racism in mainstream culture. Guns N' Roses is one of the world's hottest rock bands. They've become famous for their music and their attitudes.
Some fucking disease. They talk so many goddamn ways. It's all Greek to me.
But if the words get lost in the music, there are plenty of examples of racist tendencies and ethnic stereotyping in Australia's entertainment industry.
They took to the streets in China, but the government there had not lost its way. It was strong, and so everyone died in Tiananmen Square.
One of the things that people might first see me as, they might think of me firstly for Asian roles, and yet there are so many roles which when I'm watching the television or watching films or go to the theatre, I think I could play that. Why am I not getting seen for that kind of role? It is sometimes annoying when you see the script, and I've had to do some rewrites sometimes, and I look at a script and I think, you know, I don't go around talk like that. You know, it's just totally inaccurate, and so it is frustrating sometimes.
Anthony's particularly critical of the representation of cultures in television's soap operas.
The mix isn't accurately reflecting the cultural mix and the racial mix of Australia. And so there aren't enough Asians in those shows anyway. And when they do appear, they tend to still be, you know, kind of, and it's got to get away from that, you know.
Anthony's now working for the comedy Wagorama. It's a stage show which makes Australians laugh at their ignorant attitudes towards Greek and Italian Australians. Wagorama's now incorporated a range of Asian characters.
Boy! My name is Kyle. Kyle's Douglas. What are you laughing at? Hey, listen, I reckon there would only be one thing worse than being a wog. Being a slophead. Mate, those chonks, they caught it real bad. I guess that's why I decided to stop being one.
Well, it's interesting how the buck gets passed, and in Wagorama, my characters that I do play, some of which are Asian, do cop cop that last cab off the rank kind of racism, simply because they're the most recent here, and because they are the most recent here, they're often finding their feet and they don't have the confidence to stand up there.
Sign for the Greek people when we come in. Yes, sign. Sign for the Italian, Yugoslav, Turkish, everybody sign. Yeah. They say peace of war. But after 20 years, they forget. But we already here 20 years. And for Chinese, maybe 40 years.
One of my political objectives as an actor has always been to present Asians in their most diverse light, rather than just the kind of stereotype of the kowtowing, humble, submissive, buck-teeth coolie, you know. It'll be wonderful when we can reach the day when an actor is cast in Neighbours or Home and Away or one of those series purely because he's a good actor, and he could be of any race.
It's not only on the screen and stage where racial stereotypes are promoted. Ethnic diversity is a feature of the European modelling scene, but in Australia, our racial mix is far from represented.
The blonde, the blue eyes, the Barbie doll look, yeah, athletic, tall.
Sananka Woodham is a successful model. She's walked the catwalks of the world and says Australia's industry is the toughest if you're not white.
I've done Paris and Milan and London. Now the difference I find from there to here, now I've been in Australia now for 9 years, is that a lot more ethnics and blacks are used more freely in overseas, in Europe. One job that I actually went for, and I had to go twice because they couldn't decide whether they wanted to use me, and it was for a cover of a catalogue. In the end, I got the job and I was really happy. The final product came through my letterbox one day, and I had to laugh because when I looked at it, I thought that was the job that I did, but where's my head? They had superimposed a Caucasian head on top of my body. Living in Australia and seeing how many Orientals there are here, and a huge ethnic group, they should be using more in their advertising and in the catalogues they get through the door every day. You don't see it.
The hope is that attitudes are changing. One retailer has taken a step by introducing a range of black and Asian children mannequins to their store displays.
I mean, what we're looking at is trying to get the public to think that this store is in a multicultural society, and because of that, we really need to be able to present a multicultural society to that customer to make them feel comfortable, so that they can relate to what we're doing in the store. Part of that is presenting this new range of children's figures in black kids, there's Asian kids, and there's white kids, and that sort of thing is going to get across, break down some of those barriers that exist.
I don't think there is an answer as to why there is racism. I don't know anyway.
Well, lack of understanding and information.
Ignorance, fear of something new.
I think there's racism because we traditionally believe that we're a white culture and that we've been invaded by the yellow peril or something like that.
We just tend to single them out, and even the Greeks and the Italians will say that now to the Asians.
I think the racists are the ignorant people of Australia, the ones that were never brought up, or that weren't brought up well by their parents to accept other races.
Yeah, I'd just like to know how long will it be before the media, education, the advertising and sporting institutions, how long they're going to condone this form of racism, and they are condoning it by their silence, and if you're not a part of the solution, then you're a part of the problem.
Racism isn't hereditary, it's learnt, and one way of regulating it could be through creating new laws. The federal government is planning racial vilification legislation. The legislation would make racist abuse illegal, but as Jeff Jenkins reports, there are doubts that laws can stop racism.
The federal government is drawing up a law to make racial vilification illegal.
The bill is expected to come before Parliament in August. New South Wales and the ACT already have similar laws.
In a nutshell, the legislation says that you're not allowed publicly to put anyone in fear of their life by reason of their particular race or nationality. And also that you're not allowed to create hatred, contempt or ridicule for someone on the same basis, on the basis of their race. Let's keep it simple.
In a bill proposed last year, the law would allow people to make complaints about racist abuse to the Human Rights Commission, which would then seek a resolution through conciliation. In more extreme cases, people would be able to go to a police station and lay charges against a person for inciting racial hatred.
They call us, Chin Chong or Wok or, some slop eyes. And, also they call us, dog eater or cat eater and call many other names.
Sang Nguyen is a leader of Melbourne's growing Vietnamese community. In 1991, he became Australia's first Vietnamese mayor when he was elected mayor of Richmond. He came here as a refugee in 1977.
I think the racial vilification laws would be good because it will make the other people to stop verbally abuse other people. And in the past, there was no law to protect disadvantaged people, to protect the migrant or black people, Aboriginal people.
Linda Javen is a political writer for Rolling Stone magazine.
Racism sucks. Racism is vile and offensive. Racism is an attitude espoused by pimply adolescents and men with dicks even smaller than their brains.
But Linda thinks racial vilification laws are stupid.
Racial vilification laws don't work. You get some neo-Nazi dweeb and you put him in the dock for racism, right? What's he going to do? He's going to go, "Oh, I've been arrested for racism. Gee, I'm going to change my attitude. I'm going to go out and study the Indonesian language. I'm going to take Chinese cooking lessons. I'm going to learn from the Japanese economic miracle. I'm going to be different now. I'm going to be good to our differently coloured friends. And I'm even going to buy a Yathu Yindi album." I mean, really?
Yeah, this is wrong. Because a lot, in the past, they still verbally abuse people because they can get away. No one could stop them. Now, one thing to stop them, people will get charged.
Under the proposed law, there would be exemptions for artists and performers. Ross Stevenson sees racial vilification as a potential legal minefield.
It will be difficult, I think, to draw the line between what is art. I mean, that's been and what is not art. So what is racial vilification as a work of art and racial vilification as a work of hate? People have been trying to define for centuries what art is. Now, if Adolf Hitler, who, as luck would have it, was also an artist, or a painter at least, now if he said, "Now look, I'm not really stirring up hatred against the Jews, and if I am, it's a work of art. This is a public performance. It's not a sculpture or a painting. My speech at Nuremberg was a work of art. That was me as performance artist."
I'm from a Jewish family, and we told jokes like, "Why do Jews have big noses? Because air is free." Now, maybe some people are going to be very offended at the Jewish joke I told. All right. What are you going to do? Sue me, get me under the racial vilification laws. But can you actually get someone for slandering themselves?
Many things we can make a joke. Why we have to using a racial group of people to make a joke and have a good laugh. I don't think it's a funny joke. Some people will get hurt.
Freedom of speech has to be absolute, and I really mean that. I think that we can't start compromising on freedom of speech, because once you start compromising, it can go on and on and on. If we start introducing racist vilification laws, is racism a worse crime than sexism?
The New South Wales Anti-Discrimination Board says that no one's freedom of speech has been interfered with by the New South Wales law in over 1,000 complaints received. More than half of the complaints over the past year were directed at the media. If conciliation fails, the board can refer the matter to the Equal Opportunity Tribunal, which can demand an apology and award up to $40,000 compensation. Only one matter has been referred to the tribunal so far.
I think the free society is the freedom of doing things, not hurting other people. It's the freedom to do things to make their life better, not the freedom to do things against other people.
I don't think laws can stop the spread of racism. Education may be, but not legislation as education, but legislation as laws, I don't think can ever stop people thinking the wrong way. That's not the... Look at me using my hands. Can't speak without my hands like a bloody wog.
It remains to be seen whether that will actually work, but it's good to see that there is a law there now.
There should be laws, but it'll be, my point of view is it'll be very difficult to enforce those laws.
Well, if I had the chance to make a law, I think I would.
Certainly have laws, but I don't know how we'll implement it. I mean, racism will always exist.
It'd be very difficult to police laws.
You can make laws to stop people from saying derogatory and offensive language, using their language, but you can't stop them from the way they think.
While racial vilification legislation is waiting in the wings, what of the Australians who are experiencing ongoing harassment right now? Mara Blazic reports on some encouraging moves in the fight against racism.
The most in-your-face offensive against racism is the Different Colours One People national campaign.
Free your mind.
This is Debbie Stothard. She's been behind the push to promote the Human Rights Commission campaign aimed at young Australia. It's won support across the board from personalities, schools and youth groups.
One very basic action was just to wear the Different Colours One People t-shirt or the badge or display the sticker, and it was a silent sign that you were against racism.
Free your mind. Free your mind. Free your mind.
You can't say whack, bam, kapow, you know. You can't be sort of the anti-racism vigilante group. But, you know, just say, look, this bothers me. It sounds like racism to me. I feel uncomfortable with it. If I feel this pain and I feel this anger, it must be so much worse for Indigenous peoples. And that's when I sort of get heavy and sort of become this big, loudmouth Asian woman saying, hey, hang on, you know, you're pissing me off, you know. Get off your bum. Say, I'm not racist. Or, I hate racism. Get off your bum and say, I hate racism.
The education system is trying to tackle the ugly subject of racism. South Australia and New South Wales both have specific anti-racism policies. In other states, schools are introducing their own human rights policies. Melbourne's Maribyrnong Secondary College is one. Roughly 90% of its 850 students are from non-English speaking backgrounds.
We devised a policy, and at the very beginning of the policy, it stresses the fact that all people who come to the school should be treated equally, no matter what their gender, race, religion, or whatever is. And I found there were significant numbers of students that were here without parents, like refugee kids who had left their countries and ended up in refugee camps and then been resettled in Australia. And I was amazed at how they were surviving.
He's very good
like he's a friend of my family, so, and he comes around and he helps a lot of the students with housing and money and like just sports. And he's like more a friend rather than a teacher.
The racism at school is very minimal. You don't really see any, there's no sort of violent racism. We learn a lot about other countries because we are mixed with Vietnamese and Portuguese and Arabic people. And we learn a lot because they show us, you know, the different traditions in the place, and it's good. I love it.
In classes, in the classroom, students may learn about what it's like to be a refugee, for example, and know that there are horror stories involved, and then start to think about who they're actually mixing with. So next time someone riles you, rather than lash out and say that you're black or you've got different shaped eyes, you might sort of stop and think a little bit more about what you're actually saying, what you're actually doing.
I have been to, this is my third school that I attend, and I find that this is one of the best for me. It feels like home here.
It's great in this school. Like, it's just great. When you come to this school, you just forget where you're from, because like just, I don't know, just everyone just get along. But like when you get out there, then you know people start looking at you and you think, oh yeah, you know, of course, from a different country. But in this school, you forget where you're from.
From the schoolyard to the sporting ground, and the battle's on to fight racism in football. The AFL's working on a racism code for players and supporters. This follows the now famous Nicky Winmar incident when the St Kilda player said he'd copped enough racist abuse. The codes caused a mixed reaction among players, right down to the grassroots level of football. Joshka Aziz and Dominic Fotier play for the Werribee Club in the Victorian Football Association. They've both been targets of racism.
Hopefully it'll be a big step. I mean, it's really hard to say. I mean, there's always going to be racism, there's no doubt about that.
You can't do much about the supporters, because they pay the money to get in the game and they can say whatever they want to say, really.
With tactics out in the ground, I mean, you can probably walk up to your opponent and whisper in his ear and tell him he's a wog or he's a dago or whatever. I mean, you know, and that's going to get him upset, but there's nothing you can do about that. I just can't believe that people will lower themselves that much, you know, just for a sport, and they'll start, you know, calling out all these different things. And so when I seen Nicky Winmar, I thought that's great that he actually stuck up for himself and did something about it.
No, I don't think people will live in harmony in Australia.
What would make a difference? Teaching it in school, I think.
We're all sort of here, we're all God's children, and, you know, accept the person for what they are and not for what you think they are.
Being surrounded by people from different cultures makes you a little bit more accepting of them.
We could probably put into effect that concept of a fair go, which is supposedly a part of the Great Australian ethos.
We're all the same. It doesn't matter whatever, you know, you're seeing other people. Everything is just the same. And we need each other.
Everybody has to get together to fight racism. It's not something that one person can do on their own.
That's it for Attitude this week and for the series. And if you didn't watch our entire 10-week run, here's some of what you missed.
I don't know what they want anymore, because I always put my best in. That's what I've always been told to do, and it doesn't always turn out like that.
Hello, my name is Jennifer Glass and I'm a lesbian. If you don't like it, go to hell.
Give peace a chance and give brain damaged people a chance, please.
This show comes direct from Hillary Clinton's mind. Attitude. Sorry, wait.
This man used to be a drug dealer, so we can't show you his face on television. Say hello, Rob.
I'll be a great wife. I'll be very domesticated. I'll make great children.
It's a peripheral issue. I have no opinion on a president. I mean, it hasn't mattered a tuppeny damn who's been Prime Minister of this country for the last 120 years or whatever in relation to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people.
Who do you love more, Jesus or your parents? Yourself?
I love me drugs, I suppose. See, the thing is, a Christian would say that he loves Jesus. So that's the thing about having Jesus.
Then I'll be lying.
We'll be back with a new series of 12 programs in August. See you then.
Let us know the issues that concern you by writing to Attitude, ABC TV, GPO Box 9994.